And welcome back to the Constitutionals Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the premier podcast for the website cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. This is a little gorilla episode. Shooting this on the fly because I forgot to shoot an episode on Friday. We were celebrating the 4th of July for this great nation that thinks everybody's equal when they're not. And I, truth be told, I sat down on Friday, and I was doing something else, a secret project that I will not talk about until it is either pass or not. And I just completely forgot. And I was home from work too, so I had all day. Like I went to the dentist on Thursday to have some dental surgery done. Obviously, I wasn't going to record on Thursday, even if my mouth was still numb. My tongue, the tip of my tongue, is still a little bit numb, which is very scary. My dentist, it's a woman. She was injecting some of the not anesthetic, the Novocaine. I don't know. She was injecting some of the stuff into where the tooth is on the bottom row of my back teeth, and so she's injecting something in there. And so the first round, my gums were numb, and then she's like, "All right, well, we have to do a little bit more just in case this tooth is stronger than Novocaine or whatever. Not Novocaine, but whatever." So she does a second one, and she starts pushing. You know, she puts the needle in there. She starts pushing the medicine in, the numbing juice in, and the numbing juice. That might be a title. And she does it, and obviously, the first round, I'm feeling this side go numb, but she's pushing the numbing juice in on the second round, and then my tongue, it's as if there was it hit a wall. Like I was licking ice cream, and I hit like a cookie dough bite, and like it was boom, like that, and it just half of it went numb, and I went, this can't be good. Then Thursday evening, I can't eat anything hard because it was still new, and I'm like chewing on this side and on my left side, and it's still numb. And Friday it's still numb, and Friday night it's still numb. Saturday it's still numb. I'm eating a hot dog for the celebrating this great nation, and today still a little bit numb. I can feel things with it, but still a little bit numb. So that's what I'm dealing with. Hi, I'm Chad. Also that and depression, but we're all dealing with things. It's so very strange to have that going on right now. Listen, let's get into it since this episode is very late, and we're 3 minutes in. Also, I'm getting pretty far in Pokemon Sword. I just beat the Fire Gym person. They don't call them gym leaders anymore. They're like Trials or whatever. No, Trials is Sun and Moon, which I have still yet to beat. I keep my there's a little fact about me. I keep my 3DS, the original 3DS, charged, and Pokemon Sun still loaded up as if I'm going to sit down and play that game again. Now, I really like that game, but even before playing Sword, it was so strange. I can't even hear myself right now. Let me turn myself up in the monitors. Playing it right now is just so very odd. Yeah, maybe this will help. Maybe I should just turn myself up in the monitor instead of turning the microphone gain up. So speaking of microphones, Microsoft, this comes from The Verge, written by Chris Welch. Microsoft is to permanently close all of its retail stores. Now, obviously, we're in the middle of COVID, the pandemic, and quarantine and shutdowns and all that stuff. And we knew some things were going to have to go. Some businesses were going to have to go fully online. Some were not going to be businesses at all anymore. Cheesecake Factory filed for bankruptcy. But now we have Microsoft is closing its physical stores. And much like the stores that like Apple has, much like the Apple stores, which I think it's closing like 77 of those for now. And that's just for selling stuff. Microsoft had, its Surface products out there, Xbox, all that type of stuff, ain't able to sell. But I'm not surprised that it wasn't bringing in a profit for them at this point. Even before, the quarantine and shutdowns and everything, it didn't make sense for them to have their stuff in a physical store location, because people go to the Apple store to buy Apple products, to do the Apple thing. But Microsoft, its software is so ubiquitous with PC computing that it didn't matter if they had a physical store or not. And when their phone business went down, when that what was the phone? When they bought Nokia, and then that phone business went down too. When they had Microsoft Tiles on and they had the Windows interface on the phone, it did at that point it made sense. But now it just doesn't, because they don't have the, not capital, but they don't have the brands to have it all. Like if Dell had a store, I guess that would kind of make sense. But and what do you sell in a Microsoft store? What do you at a physical store? You sell laptops, you sell mice. That's it. For and Xbox stuff. But for Apple, you got iPads, you got iPhones, you got Apple Watches, you got this and that and the other. I should actually read from this. So so they're going to keep some locations open. 4 locations that will be quote unquote reimagined as experience centers, but they'll no longer sell stuff. The New York City location on Fifth Avenue, the London location, the Sydney location, and the Redmond campus, because that's where Microsoft's headquarters are, in Redmond, Washington. But let's keep going. There's no layoffs from this, so I don't know what they're going to do with the physical people that are working there. This thing is making noise in the headphone. That if I can hear it on the headphones, it's going to be something in the microphone or in the final product. So, in April, Microsoft outlined in a blog post how many retail store associates had shifted to remote work after their everyday jobs were sidelined. You know what? I can see them basically becoming tech support, working from home. And if they don't have to work from home, in 2 years, then they'll be in an office somewhere. But I can basically see everybody who worked at a Microsoft store, and I've only seen them in a mall, but I can see everybody working at a Microsoft store becoming tech support, essentially, because that's essentially what they were. And if somebody needed to buy something, then maybe they can sell something to those people. So there you go. There's that. And then speaking of Apple, I speak of Apple earlier. The New York Times is going to pull out of Apple News. So I spoke last week about how Google was going to have Google News pay for subscriptions to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, all the Reuters, all the other pay for read websites. The Atlantic, maybe, I don't know. Washington Post. So that was going to happen. Adweek. That's going to happen. And Apple News has already been doing that. Apple's already been doing that for Apple News. Now, the thing about that is, it has not been a profitable venture. People don't want to pay $5. I know Wall Street Journal, they bury their news stories because, or they don't even put the biggest stuff on there on Apple News because it's just, and this is speculation on my part, but it just might not be worth it. The New York Times said on Monday that it was exiting its partnership with Apple News. News organizations struggle to compete with large tech companies for readers' attention and dollars. This is also written by Kellen Browning and Jack Nikas over at the New York Times. They wrote this. So right now you cannot see New York Times articles on Apple News unless you pay for it. Unless you have the app. The Times is one of the first media organizations to it puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the pull again. The hose again. The hose. It's a pull now for 2020. Things are changing. People are becoming too sensitive. Also COVID, so it's the hole. It's the hose. I give you the hole too. Hey, my washer just kicked in. The Times, which has made adding new subscribers a key business goal, said Apple had given it little in the way of direct relationships with readers and little control over the business. It said it hoped to instead drive readers directly to its own website and mobile app so it could, quote, fund quality journalism. I don't know about that. And basically, I think I read somewhere that the Times or somebody big, or Wall Street Journal was not even giving good articles to the Times anyway. Oh, Peloton just emailed me. I have a weekly schedule up. Thank you. I appreciate it. They weren't giving decent articles to Apple News anyway. Apple's aggressive promotion, this comes from the article, of Apple News on iPhones has given it's an audience of roughly 125 million monthly readers. But I think they had some type of trial. I don't know how long the trial is, but counting, especially for Apple TV Plus, counting trial members right now, Quibi, Disney Plus, counting trial members shouldn't be a factor until 3 months out. So come November, come December, when my trial is up on Apple TV Plus, when everyone else's trial is up on Apple TV Plus, and no one is using it. I mean, I think I said when the app is app. So roughly 125 million monthly readers is making or are using the app. But advertising in the app has generated little revenue for news organizations. For any subscriptions sold in the app, and this goes for every app, and I've mentioned this before, Apple also takes 30% cuts. So Apple News Plus is $10. I thought it was $5. So that's not worth it. $5 is a better deal for everybody, but $10, and they get 30% of that? So $7 goes to the New York Times, goes to Washington Post, goes to Reuters. Still, many publishers... Wait, well, Apple told publishers that the service would deliver customers... That the service would deliver customers they wouldn't otherwise get. But many publications would be undercutting their own prices. Very true. I can attest, the Wall Street Journal is $20 a month. and Apple's charging $10 and what? Split... They still wouldn't get a full $7 Wall Street Journal from me. I pay $12.50 for New York Times, and they'd be getting a percentage of that, if even. Still, many publishers took the gamble, including Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, and Condé Nast, which is in its own trouble, which publishes The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, and Wired. Months after its debut, many publishers were underwhelmed by the sales, according to Digiday, a digital news media site. Executives at the Times passed on Apple News Plus and later reduced the number of articles. That's what had happened. Okay, so New York Times reduced the number of articles on its applied to Apple News, period. In an interview with Reuters last year, Mark Thompson, the Times chief executive, warned other news organizations about the risk of teaming with Apple. We knew this is happening. If you even follow how Apple handles things in the App Store, period, it's kind of not a lucrative deal for you. It seems like it is. It's not like you are going back to Microsoft. They have a thing called Game Pass, and you put your game on Game Pass and someone pays $10 a month. Or $60 for 3 months or something like that. It's something stupid. $15 a month and then $60. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But someone pays that little money, and they get access to over 100 games. From anything from something as recent as NBA 2K20 and Red Dead Redemption 2 down to Xbox 360 games like Pac-Man Ultimate Championship Edition 2. I don't know if that's on there, or the Kingdom for Keflings. But people get these deals, and for some companies, I know for Microsoft, they if a game is released on Game Pass, they pay the publishers a decent amount of money. The publishers aren't allowed to say, but it's a good chunk of money. But for others like Apple, they take a huge percentage, and and the same thing might be for Microsoft. They might take a huge percentage of the cuts, but Apple, everything is advertising dollars to them. I know I read something earlier this week that said, or read the headline of something rather, that said Apple is looking for games on Apple Arcade, their subscription game service on iPad and iPhones, that games that engage people. So if your game doesn't engage people and cause them to play essentially every single day or more often than not, then they're just not going to put the game on service. And that's why games like that one side-scrolling game I can't remember, but Exit the Gungeon, the sequel to Enter the Gungeon, that's why games, I guess, kind of started on there. But then they obviously ported to PS4 and Xbox and Switch and the PC. It just doesn't. A lot of this does not bode well for working with Apple. If you're a company, and if you're a young company, I mean, if you're Dodge Roll, who the publishers of Exit the Gungeon, I mean, yeah, you have like what 10, 15 games out already on these consoles and Steam and PC and all that stuff. But is it a lucrative proposition for you to team up with Apple and say, okay, for a year exclusivity, people can play, because Apple Arcade's been out for a year, $5 a month, you get access to all these games. But for a year, people can play our game only on the iPad and the iPhone. But is that enough? There are other games on, you know what? I have the iPad in front of me. There are other games on the Apple Arcade that are very interesting that I've tapped on this app 7 times and it did not bring it up. That are very interesting, but I mean, the splash screen here is unlimited access to 100 plus ad-free games, no in-app purchases. But does that? I mean, are people looking for that? Do people want to pay $5 a month to? I mean, maybe the casual gamer, but not the person who's paying for PlayStation Plus or Nintendo Online, Nintendo Switch Online, or Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Like, yeah, you have the SpongeBob Patty game on here, but it looks like every other it's a SpongeBob side scroller, an auto runner looks like it. So it looks like you got a Pac-Man party game on there, you know. But you have Sonic Racing, Oceanhorn 2, which is a sequel to a pretty decent mobile game, but a Rayman Mini, which you know Ubisoft loves to kill Rayman like this. But I mean, at some point, it's not going to be the greatest deal anymore. And nobody wants to do this. I mean, if you have Apple TV and you can play those games on there, maybe, but otherwise, no. Listen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do the rest of the episode. And welcome back to the show. I didn't even count down that time. I just went in like this. If you ever see me looking off to camera right, it is me looking at the monitor, making sure that I am on the screen. A little fact about me. Today, my friend is he's a nurse, and I don't get to see him often because he's usually working a lot. But he invited me to his pool, so I had been at the pool. Truly, before coming in here and sitting down, I just hopped out the shower. So I've been out. So it's 6:00 now. I got home at like 5:30. I threw a potato in the oven. I was like, I'm going to make this episode of Constitutionals because I forgot to make it. We had been in the pool since like maybe 1:30. I never stay out that long. Also, it was hot. It was hot today in Atlanta. The sun was out. Clouds were in their homes, so they were not in the sky. But it's going to rain the rest of the week. So I thought, you know what, might as well go out. Also, I didn't do anything this weekend. The 4th was not celebrated by me. Oh, also, Hamilton is on Disney Plus. So for us poor people who were not able to see that show, I'm very glad to watch it. I have not seen it yet. I've listened to the album since before it came out. From Never Not Funny. Oh my God, is my shirt reversed in the? Oh no, this is on TV. Oh yeah, you can read it. Never Not Funny. Oh my gosh, I'm wearing a Never Not Funny shirt. This is and they're the guys that showed me to Hamilton. They had Anthony Rapp on way before the show came out, and Anthony Rapp came on the show on the podcast and said this is going to be a big show. And then, you know, lo and behold, that fall when it bowed on Broadway, whew, man, it exploded. And I bought the album. I spent money on that album before I even saw the show, before I even knew what the show was about. But I knew Lin from Lin-Manuel from Miranda from Freestyle Love Supreme because it was a show on CISO at the time. This is how far back this was, 2015. Or 14. CISO was a big thing. Remember CISO? I have to talk about CISO a lot. All right. Speaking of Broadway, New York Times, this comes from. Written by Michael Paulson. Broadway is going to remain closed for the rest of the year. So I'd been doing episodes of News Time about, things that were closed down during the COVID-19 pandemic, coronavirus pandemic. So, Broadway shut down, movie theaters shut down, movies aren't coming back, TV show production shut down, music, how everything was affected. So some episodes were just like about one of those different things. And I did an episode about Broadway, and Broadway was supposed to come back in July-ish. And same thing for movie theaters, supposed to come back in July-ish or August-ish. Then it got pushed back to September. Movies got pushed back to September too as well. And so that means episodes of News Time that I had planned out have been pushed back, like fully planned out. Everything's ready to go. I just got to shoot it, or write and then shoot it. But so now, all that to say, Broadway is going to be done until 2021. And the Broadway League announced last Monday that theater owners and producers will refund or exchange tickets previously purchased for shows through January 3rd. Given the unpredictability of the coronavirus pandemic that has promoted the shuttering of Broadway, the league said it was not yet ready to specify exactly when shows would reopen. So there's no date. And there are some streaming. There's like 2 Broadway streaming services that would stream in the past couple of months Broadway shows, not live, but I would think that they could put on these types of shows. More specifically, at the time of this recording, Conan O'Brien is going to host his show at Largo at Coronet in Los Angeles with a small crew, and I assume Andy as well. So he's going to be back in the theater. He's just not going to be back at Warner Brothers on the Warner Brothers lot. So I would think that, much like they're doing for the NBA, MLS, MLB, and for the NFL, put these actors in a bubble, and for I don't know, a month, just put them in a bubble and put their families in a bubble and charge the same exuberant prices for your tickets and do the shows on stage in theaters, but have like broadcast keys for the people who want to pay for it and watch it. That would be wonderful. And I understand the legitimacy of that would be difficult to adhere to. However, counterpoint, wouldn't it be the way that digital screeners are now held? So like if there's a screener for a Netflix movie or a Warner Brothers movie or a Paramount movie, and you're somebody in the Academy and you have that screener, what used to happen was people would get DVDs in the mail, which still kind of does happen. Like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel apparently sent a giant pink suitcase to literally everybody in the Television Academy, but filled with the discs that you could easily just watch the episodes of on Amazon Prime. But people they watch those discs with their family, but that's just that's the risk you have to take with these Broadway streams. I set up a website. I point to my computer. That's to my right. Set up a website. Broadway streams. .net. That sounds like a tour. What's it called? A tour? No, not tour. People download torrent. It sounds like a torrenting website. Boy, I haven't. Jesus. TV and movies are so easy to get now. You don't need and music. You don't need to torrent anything. Although I have been looking for It's Gary Shandling Show because the DVD is truly thousands of dollars. So thus far, 3 shows: the Disney musical Frozen, which had opened in 2018, a new Martin McDonagh play called Hangman, and a revival of Edward Albee's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which I had heard good things about, both of which were in previews, had announced that they will not resume performances and when Broadway reopens. Broadway is a little bit more tricky compared to movies and TV shows, which now have the green light to start going back later this year. These shows, these people work on, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf for so long, and for this to hit, and you can't do it because, you make a movie, it can play anywhere. You can put it on streaming, you can put it in a theater, you can do a limited run on both, put it on DVD or Blu-ray. But for these plays, and musicals, everything is scheduled, meticulously. We're going to have Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark play for 2 months, and then it's gone, and then we're gonna have Hamilton in the theater, and then we're gonna have you can only do so much. So this stinks for the people, especially those who don't have the actors don't have the money, but the producers do. So it sucks for the actors who have to get unemployment during this time, and they're all in New York, and they don't know when their next job. They truly don't know where their next job is going to be. So yeah. I have nothing else to add to that. So I did a news time episode about Broadway closing. You can definitely check that out. I linked to it in the show notes. And the last thing I want to talk about is a podcast called The Nod, which is a Black culture podcast. So if you're offended by either of those 2 words, then just turn off the podcast now. The creators of that show, the hosts Brittany Luce and Eric Eddings, want their show off. They want to own their show. So the show is produced by Gimlet Media, which is now owned by Spotify. This comes from The Verge, called "The Hosts of the Nod Want Spotify to Hand Over Their Podcast." This is written by Ashley Carmen. It's a very good piece talking. Jesus, God, it just popped because the thing was plugged in the iPad. Anyway, the Nod, they are ticked off that Spotify controls, everything essentially that they do now. They want to expand the Nod. They want to turn it into, maybe a TV show, maybe a book deal, things that people turn podcasts into, or things that, TV shows can turn into. You want to be able to expand. You want to be able to own the brand. Like in the late 90s, in the 90s period, when The Simpsons had music CDs out, and they had branded DVDs that had like certain episodes from certain seasons. A Christmas DVD with like 5 episodes, Christmas episodes. They had games with that starred Bart. Bart versus the Aliens, I believe, or the different brands for The Simpsons. And now they don't do that anymore, for good reason. But The Simpsons game was really good. The last one that came out in 2007, that was really good. They came out with them around the same time as the movie. That was a good year for The Simpsons stuff. And then season 20 started too. Anyway, got to keep going. So Brittany Luce, I hope I'm saying her name right, tweeted that, I'll read a tweet. It's a thread. I'll just read the 2 tweets though. They're targeted. Even as we host a visual version of the Nod, we have to ask permission to post to the Nod's podcast feed, which holds 100 plus episodes that we poured everything into. They comply, but that we even have to ask is a reminder of just how wild the imbalance of power in our industry is. That show bears our faces. It's about the unique lens through which Eric and I see the world. It's critically acclaimed, beloved, and more relevant than ever. It's derivative of a show we created before we even heard of Gimlet. Do we not deserve to own a fraction of it? And I want to go back to what she said. It is, she said specifically, that we even have to ask as a reminder of just how wild the imbalance of the power of industry is. Earlier this week, it was rumored that Scripps was looking to sell off Stitcher Premium, which is the premium version of Earwolf Podcast, where there's extra podcasts. You can get the back catalog. You pay $5 a month or $35 a year. You get back catalogs and news podcasts. But we have seen, in the time that Stitcher came up, and Howl before that, we have seen things like, what is the one where Hannibal Buress' podcast? Hannibal Buress' podcast is on, oh God. Oh, speaking of Hannibal Buress, he put out his new stand-up special on YouTube, so check it out. Handsome Rambler is on, oh God, Luminary. So Luminary is charging $8 a month for specific podcasts. I think like Guys We Effed, which is that and Barstool Sports. Lena Dunham's podcast, Hannibal Buress' podcast, Trevor Noah's podcast, and a bunch of other shows hosted by famous people are on Luminary, and you can only get them on Luminary, and it's $8 a month, and you have to use a specific app for this. Gatekeeping a podcast is not good. When Spotify obviously has deals and plans for only putting out podcasts on Spotify, so you have to be forced to use that as your all-in-one audio thing. When you have Pocket Casts, when you have, WeCast, I don't know, different, Apple Podcasts, we have Google Podcasts. People want to use the apps they want to use. It's frustrating. And now, when you have, and this is not to knock Conan, but when you have shows like his or Dax Shepard's podcast, people come out and do these shows. Justin Long's podcast, I can only assume, is doing well. Jenna Fisher and, The Office Ladies podcast. What is her name? This is so embarrassing. God, now I have to look this up. The Office Ladies. It's a show I had not listened to. I listened to one episode of, and I said no more. Angela Kinsey. When you have these famous people coming and doing these shows, and they're getting all of the advertising the advertising daughters. There we go. That's the title of this episode, 3051. Okay. But when they have the advertising dollars, and when shows like Never Not Funny can't, shows like Doughboys have to go to Patreon to get their money. Yeah, it's just not a good look for the industry, and it's so unregulated. There's no podcast union yet. We have a writers union, we have a directors union, a producers union, but there's no podcast union. And this is not to say there won't be. There will be at some point in the future, but for now, it's such an unregulated mess, and the power will fall to the companies that are getting the big advertiser dollars in the long run. So Loose Nettings are only two of the podcasters who have begun speaking out about the constraints of their podcasting contracts, which were written before they hosted successful shows. There's people at BuzzFeed's now canceled another round. There's a show from Misha Youssef, who had a show covering Muslims' lives in the U.S., is now owned by Southern California's KPCC. Everybody wants to own their own catalog. You should be able to own your own stuff. It's like Taylor Swift or any other musician wanting to own the masters of their music. Of course you want to own the masters. You want to. It's bad for another company to say, okay, you can't make a show, but we're going to make a best of your show. Misha Youssef tweeted, and while we're sharing experiences, this is commenting on Brittany Luce's tweets thread. I don't own a single % of Tell Them I Am. That's her podcast. It's a podcast largely based on my story. I pitched it in my first week as an employee at KPCC. I was 24. I didn't know anything about IP representatives. And that's the key words, IP representative. If you don't own the IP to your own show, then I mean, you're going to be in for a whirlwind of litigation. I don't know. Definitely check out this one. It's a very, very detailed thing about podcasting. You'll understand the podcasting world, or why some shows don't, branch out, or why they don't make TV shows. That's the reason. This is the reason. But hey, listen, I got to go. If you like what you heard here or saw here, head on over to cpluscomedy.com, where there's so many great interviews that hopefully the people I've emailed will get back to me with the interview questions I wrote them and had to email them. If you want to see a video version of this show, head to youtube.com/cpluscomedy, where you can also see the premiere show for C Plus Comedy called News Time. We just had our 300th episode. Definitely check it out. It's a roast of me and the show, as hosted by the other Chads that are characters on the show. Definitely check it out. I spent a lot of time on it, and I can't believe I've done 300 episodes of a show that no one's seen. Although a lot of people have told me they've seen it, which is a lie. So definitely check it out. If you like this show, subscribe, rate on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends about it. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Seamless Comedy. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Chad Black White. Like us on Facebook. And please stay safe out there in this time of COVID. This is the end of the show. Goodbye. Okay.